Victoria Usher, working mum of 2 girls and CEO of multi-award-winning PR agency Gingermay, experienced first-hand gender discrimination in the workplace. Tenacious, passionate, and stronger than she thought, she overcame the odds and founded her own people-focused business with flexibility, well-being, success, and empathy at its very core. She talks circles of control, female empowerment, and why best not to make a pitch in the car. I'm Sam, your Surviving Parenthood host. Please don't forget to share and subscribe to this channel. And I do hope you enjoy our latest episode as much as I did. Hello, welcome, Victoria. Thank you for joining us here today.
Lovely to meet you, Sam.
Good. Okay, so you have 2 children, a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So could you start us off by telling us a parenting moment or fail recently or not so recently?
So, we've all been through COVID, so there are multiple fails that I could tell you about, but they probably wouldn't differ from anybody else's parenting fails. So pre-COVID, when I was working from home, I had plenty, and probably one of the most memorable was when I was pitching for business, and the kids were probably maybe 4 and 1 or something, and I had no childcare at all, and I had to do this pitch. It was a US pitch with a team out there, and there was no other time they could do it. And I was literally racking my brains about how I could do this pitch and still uphold the professionalism that I was, that was required. And
yes,
and I say this just because this was probably 9 years ago, and there was an expectation that you wouldn't have kids around you. So so that massive pressure.
Yeah.
In the end, I had to go out into my car actually and sit outside and pitch, and that would have been fine. Wow. But it was about 5-6 o'clock in the evening, and I'd got in the car and I started the pitch. And it was all absolutely fine, doing really well. And then I realised that the lights were actually, which I needed, the lights were on in the car, but then they really gradually kind of went down until I was sitting in the dark in front of this computer, in front of this team of people, and then it all became about. I have to say something about why I'm actually sitting in the dark, and I think I'd put something behind my head so they couldn't see the sort of head, the back of the chair. And in the end, I just had to say, by the way, I am sitting in my car because my kids are in the house, and that's why the lights have just gone down. And as always, people are really forgiving. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
It was kind of embarrassing.
But it's that internal pressure, isn't it? I mean, literally, you saying that you had to sit in your car doing a pitch made me feel anxious. So I thought that was going to be enough. But then, yes, the light slowly descending as the pitch went on.
I have another little one that I can tell you.
Yeah,
really was fine, that I don't normally talk about. But when I was 6 weeks, my baby was 6 weeks old, and I had to go and do a pitch. This is a second child, because we were going to lose the account. So I had to take my HR manager with me, and we drove to London. And she basically, I fed the baby, 6 weeks, tiny 6-week-old baby, chucked her in a pram. This girl went off and walked around the block while I went in, and we knew we had a 2-hour gap till the next feed because she was that little. And I was sitting with one of the directors with this like super hard CEO who wouldn't have cared whether I had a 6-week-old baby or whatever. Made my case anyway. Told them why they needed to carry on working with us. This was in a previous agency. This wasn't when I was actually running Gingermay. So I was really proud of myself. My brain was still in my head. I'd done myself proud. And I looked down at my notes in front of me and noticed something white on my jumper. And I kind of really casually looked down. And basically my breast pad had completely popped out my jumper because obviously I was feeding, right?
You needed the pad.
So then I had to really subtly try to push it back inside the top. But they're plastic back. So all I could hear was the rustling of this pad. And the girl, the director next to me, had 2 children, could see what was going on. And I could just see her shoulders shaking beside me as she could see what I was actually trying to achieve with this, mammoth breastfeeding kind of issue in this boardroom with this, row of men opposite me who, quite frankly, probably hadn't noticed what the thing was that was hanging out of my top and why I was so embarrassed. So it was that awful intersection between trying to be a very senior business operator, and a baby gets thrown into the mix, and it was fun. We won it. We got the business.
But, well done. Amazing.
It was a bit edgy for a minute there. So
the trials and tribulations, honestly, that we have to go to. I remember when I was working as a therapist when I was pregnant with my first, and I was horrendously ill with morning sickness. I mean, horrendously ill for about the first 16 weeks, but I had all these clients booked in. I was working from Harley Street. It was a very professional setup. And I would literally have my hour with my client, go to the toilet, throw up, come back in, have my client again, go over to the toilet, throw up. It was just, just what we have to, the endurance of it all is just... incredible. So I want to talk about this because first of all, can I just say, I mean, we know that from the introduction that you've got an incredibly successful PR agency, Gingermay, and this episode is all about inspiring women. And I would love to say that I love what you stand for, your passion for sustainability, the mentoring that you do with women, the very sensitive outlook that you have on people's well-being. But I would love to know about the sort of hardships, first of all, and then what you had to do to overcome those, because I know that you've come up against discriminatory workplace decisions, and I'd love to talk about your journey to success and what you had to weather, basically, to get to where you are now.
It is not easy. I would say I would do it all over again, though, weirdly, because I think that you get tougher, and that enables you to hit the next barrier a little bit harder, actually, and you get more resilient as you go on. So it's actually the earlier barriers that you come up against are the hardest ones, because you've got to really push yourself out of your comfort zone to hit them. But when you run business for a while, you become kind of a bit more used to it and more resilient. Doesn't make it easier, but you just know you're coming up against that again. And, I'm obviously still not out the weeds, and there are, obviously challenges every single day.
Of course,
But it's growth. A lot of it's growth mindset, and it's about actually thinking that these are opportunities in disguise. That's how I always try to look at them. Say, how can I get the best out of this situation, even though it looks really, really rubbish? So that kind of growth mindset is really important. But yes, I think probably two of the earliest huge barriers I had was actually when I had both of my children. So with my first pregnancy, I worked for a really big company. And I've only really just started talking about this because I think I had quite a lot of fear and anxiety about going public with it, really, because I was worried that they legally would come after me if I talked about it. And I wouldn't name who they are, but such is the fear that they manage to instill in you. You don't really kind of talk about it. But now, with all of the other movements that are coming about, I feel more confident about talking about the experiences I had. So with my first pregnancy, I was, really senior, C-suite regionally. I decided I was going to come back to work after 6 months of maternity leave, which I was entitled to a year, but I wanted to come back after 6 months. And basically I was given the heads up on the quiet that my office was going to be closing locally. So my commute would have gone from 25 minutes to 2 hours, which with a young child would have made a huge difference. And basically the advice I was given on the side was just try and take more maternity leave. So this is from a senior member of staff. They said, don't come back yet, wait to see, because then you can negotiate your package coming back. And I thought, that's a really smart move. So I did delay it. And my boss was so annoyed with me that this is all legally. I could have, I was entitled to up to a year, but I took another 3 months off. And basically when I came back in to have the discussions, what they had done was actually made my role redundant while I was on maternity leave, and moved me to a new role that was actually based in the Netherlands, Monday to Friday. So what that would mean is that I would have to fly out to the Netherlands on a Sunday night, and I wouldn't be back until really late on a Friday. So they were kind of putting me into an impossible situation. It was all totally illegal, obviously. But the problem is the onus is on you as an individual to try and prove that they're being obviously illegal. And I think if they did now, there's so much more knowledge really now about the legalities around it. But I did push back. I managed to get a settlement, but I think the bitter taste in my mouth was I'd worked so hard. I was so committed to that organisation and really worked hard. And the minute I needed them on my side, they'd done that. They'd literally pulled the carpet from underneath my feet and all my support and put me in that impossible situation with a baby.
Wow.
Really difficult. So that was the first one. And then with the second, I was working as a managing director in an agency, and I was told that in no uncertain terms that if I didn't come back to work within 6 weeks, this particular pitch that I was talking about, that I would lose my job. Wow. So I had 6 weeks, I was only allowed 6 weeks off. And this was all said really cleverly on a train to London, in a meeting, in a restaurant, where there's no way it wouldn't be taken down. So, of course, it was their word, mine. But I did come back after 6 weeks as they threatened. And actually, that sort of treatment, I think by the second time, I thought, this is rubbish. How, and you kind of, when you're younger and you don't have children, you think it's all going to be fine. Of course, working women have the same rights. And then the things happen to you that happen, you think, oh my God, I had no idea that it was going to be this tricky. And it was actually it was on that background that I then founded my own business, because I really couldn't find a business that was going to treat me equally and give me the opportunities that I felt I had worked for and earned. And actually I was put right on the back burner just because I had 2 kids. And because I'm quite tenacious like that, I'm not going to let somebody do that to me. So that was the start of the journey, basically, from that point. And it was terrifying, but I knew it was probably the only option I really had.
And what were your thought processes then? Obviously, that sounds incredibly difficult and traumatic, really, actually, what you had to endure there. And I'm wondering how you go from those setbacks, those obstacles, to actually thinking, you know what, I'm going to make this into an opportunity. You know what, I'm going to learn lessons and reframe these negative experiences and go ahead and do something for, the highest good for myself and for other women and, everyone involved in your workplace. What is the actual thought process that goes on behind that?
Yes. So I think, that's possibly that kind of very positive mindset is where you get to a little bit down the line. Certainly at the beginning, the emotions you're feeling are, huge amounts of anxiety and obviously stress. You feel out of your comfort zone enormously. Setting up a business was the last thing I ever wanted to do. It really wasn't on my game plan. I always thought I'd be a supporting member of a founder, a team, and maybe as a managing director of a founder. So that was really stressful, and also financially, because I was a really big contributor to their house. So I had a runway financially where I could sustain the family, and then after that point I would run out of money. So it was really, really critical. But I think, how do you turn it around? I think sometimes when you're being bumped along those difficult paths, if you try to really focus on what's actually happening, and you try to dial down the anxiety as much as possible, often you can reflect back on opportunities like that. And that's how I tend to do it, is remembering when I was stressed in the past and thinking, okay, well, look at how positive that turned out. You can never see what the positive spin on anything is going to be until afterwards. And I can't speak for other people, obviously they deal with it all differently, but just about every situation I've had has had an unexpected twist into it, which has been really wonderful, like a silver lining. I mean, even when we're going through COVID, we had it was terrifying as a business owner to go through a proper recession. And I set the business up in the last recession, but to actually go through it with, 45, 50 staff that you're supporting their mortgages and their families, it was such a responsibility. Yeah. It was awful. Yeah. But, I'm not frightened of that now. So that's one thing that's come out of it. I'm not frightened of a recession anymore because I know what to do, because I've lived through it. Yeah. And secondly, that COVID period turned out to actually have so many amazing opportunities for me as an individual and for the business. And the business is stronger, better, I'm less stressed overall. We've actually built a framework beneath the business that it needed, that it didn't have, and we could do that within the sort of the lull we had over COVID. So when you look back on it, I think what a lot of people tend to do is they tend to go, oh God, that was so stressful. That was just dreadful. I don't kind of even want to touch it again.
Yeah.
Stress is a mental mind. It's thoughts. Stress is really just a thought that's coming into your head, and it's, into your brain. It's reacting obviously with your body, creating stress hormones. And actually that's what people come away with, and they tend to lose sight of what the positive things are. So there are different tactics and techniques. Obviously, writing them down as you go through is a really good way of doing that. And reflecting time, rather than just rushing through it and thinking I don't want to leave this behind. So those are the tactics that I use to try and get through tricky, difficult, stressful moments and try to get the best out of it.
Yeah, those are really, really amazing tips. Thank you for those. So I guess, are you saying that you have to sort of ride the emotional wave? You have to validate and experience all those feelings associated with those stressful times, the anger, the frustration, the betrayal, and sit with those feelings in order to fully process them, and then move forward with the positives, the silver linings, the strategies, to make it good, to make it better for yourself.
Exactly, it's exactly it. Yes, I think the emotions are overpowering. It's your limbic brain talking to your body, and you're in the emotion. Yeah. I find that as soon as I accept the situation, and that is really hard, acceptance. Yeah. But if you can recognise that often you're pushing against it. So I will, in COVID, I remember, when it was all everything was just falling around me, and I could see it was like being in a crumbling building where the bricks were falling around me, and I was adamant it wasn't happening. I was like, this isn't going to happen. It's not happening. And I didn't realise just how much I was fighting it, and the anxiety I was having was because I was trying to control it, in whichever way I could. And actually, I came to a point of accepting it in April, and I remember thinking, do you know what? Whatever's going to be is going to be. I'm so out of control in this situation. So what parts of this is in my control? What are the parts that I can actually have some kind of leverage over and do something about? And that's what I did. I literally said, right, these are the parts that I can do something about. So I went into the business and did a lot of reorging and rewrote policies and all of those things I've been putting off for years, but I had the time to do it, and that was the stuff I had the control over. I couldn't control whether or not we lost work or whether or not we had new business pitches, because that was other companies and other businesses. So focusing very much on what I was in control of and accepting everything else that was happening. And the acceptance is literally just saying to yourself, I am out of control. I just need to just go with and ride the wave. And it's a mind over matter thing. And once I can do that in any given situation, it is a lot easier to deal with. I'm not saying it's easy, by the way. I'm not kind of sitting here.
I get that.
Being patronising.
No,
I
you're not.
It's different with everybody else, but it's that for me works really, really well. I've got a friend I'm seeing her next week. She can't travel because of COVID, and she literally had a breakdown for about 2 weeks because of it. And I just said to her, I know it's stressful, but it's so out of your control. But you'll be able to travel again at some point, next year. But if you're even preparing to travel, we all have to accept it might not happen, because we're in this period that we're so not in control of this. So you just have to, it's an ebb and flow and an ebb and flow, and we're going into lockdown again. And then you have to accept that. And then it will come right. It's like a wave that will go up and down, and just try and just go with it and see what opportunities. And that's where I think so many people struggle in situations like we're in, because they're so used to being in control of their entire lives. And we're so out of control. It shows us how out of control we actually really are. That's what I think COVID does. I think it really shines a spotlight on how none of us really are in a lot of control of what's happening. But there are some bits you can. But in terms of the macro picture, there's no control at all.
The Twinkl Parents Hub is full of helpful advice, activities, and ideas to support people like you. You can find stacks of content to help with your child's learning, blogs packed with fun ideas, and resources to support you and your child's health and well-being. Head to the Twinkl website, click Parents, and see how we can help you survive and thrive. Twinkl Parents, made by teachers, trusted by parents.
Yeah, I think that COVID really does magnify sort of your darkest fears in a way. And I love the fact that you said, look at what you can control and what you can't control, because, we can't control a pandemic, but we can control how we react to that pandemic in a way. So that's really good advice. And I think as well, what you were saying there about acceptance, there's so much bravery in just sitting there. I actually do accept this situation. It's vulnerable, isn't it? It's I have to put my control, my need to change, manipulate, alter this in some way, and just accept it for what it is right now.
Right, 100%. And you don't agree with it. So the problem is you don't want to accept it.
You don't want to, yeah.
It's a human thing, but you can't, you can't do anything about it. And you can see
exactly.
people sit with the anger and it totally takes over their whole life. Instead of moving through, you almost want to move through it rather than be smashing up against it if you can. In any sort of, in given situations where you don't have the control over any of the outcomes.
Yeah. No, that's really good advice. So I would love to know a bit more about any advice you've got, because, if there's any working mums listening who might perhaps find themselves compromised purely because of their gender. Also, any women out there that might, there's lots of capable women out there who've had to give up their careers, who want to move forward with something, perhaps after having kids, or pursue a passion in some way, but don't know or have the steps to move forward. I'm just wondering if you have any general advice for any of our lovely mums listening.
Yes. So I think it's go and talk to people, certainly.
Okay.
So people that have done it, business owners, consultants, you will have people in your network that you can go and have an honest chat with. And I think I do a lot of that. So talking to people before they jump. And you need an honest appraisal of the pros and cons, because there are, generally speaking, if you run your own business, obviously there are a lot of advantages and a huge number, and they do outweigh the disadvantages, but there are also a lot of disadvantages, masses of them. And the problem is at the beginning you see more of the disadvantages in some respects versus the advantages, but it's having your eye on the prize further down the line. So if you can kind of keep going for a couple of years, it does tend to get easier. And obviously one of the biggest things about running your own business when you've got kids is that you choose your working hours. So that would be the benefit, which is you think, great, I've got flexibility. The disadvantage is you tend to use all your spare time for work. So you lose, I lost my social life and I was getting up 4 a.m, 5 a.m. in the morning to try and work before the kids got up, and then working in the evening to do that, to kind of do that juggle. And most mums I know will work something similar, but you become a highly efficient machine. You are so much more efficient than you were before, because actually you can't afford to do things like chat. It's just irrelevant kind of chat. I didn't realize that I wasn't about efficiency. I was about getting through the day when I worked for other people. It was about I would leave work at 5:30, and whether I was how productive I was during that time was not of any consequence to me. But as soon as you're working for yourself, it's all about productivity. That's the main measurement that you're actually looking at. So you become really highly effective, and then you become highly effective across all of the different areas of your life. So that for me is a real plus, because I enjoy being a very a person that really understands how I work best, when I work best, and I can help other people to see that as well, because I've been through that process. So at work I'll be like, why don't you start work later in the day, because I can see you're not a morning person, so come in at 11. Work with the cadence of your body and the peaks and flows of your body. I have a sleep in the afternoon quite often, because
I love that.
It's great, but why not?
Yeah, why not?
Who says? It's my rules, and if I'm do it and I'm fitting in and still getting all my work done, it makes me feel better. Why shouldn't I?
Not? Yeah. So, I mean, I know that you've said before in our chat previously that just leading on from that, how you don't like to micromanage the staff. You do give them that flexibility and you do treat them like, proper adults. And that means that you can get the best out of them, and that means that their well-being is at the fore. And what would you say, like what kind of results do you see in the workplace by having that mentality?
So my general viewpoint on people, as you said, in general, is I try to use the coaching approach with people. So try to get them very much to find the solution themselves, which empowers them. So that's something that you're starting to see more in the workplace. So rather than dictating and telling, you're asking open questions. Well, how would you see this? How do you think we could get to the solution here? What do you think is the right way to do it? What resources do you think you would need? Instead of saying, this is what you need. This is what I think. So you get that ownership, which is really important. So, in terms of actually micromanaging, getting them to do it their way is it's the only way, to be honest with you, because people won't engage properly and they'll drop things halfway through if they're doing it your way. And then generally speaking, with the parents in the organisation as well, I pretty much leave them to agree their working hours and do the hours that they need to do. So we'll have an initial agreement. So we've just had a director start, a working mum, hasn't been in the workplace for 9 years, and I can see that she said, I want to work 3 days, and we're letting her work 3 days. And I know she's going to need some flexibility. I can see that already. She hasn't seen it because she's never worked while she's had kids. We've got her. We've got a single mum of 2 young children, and if she has to go early, she goes early. She'll go at 1 o'clock and go and pick the children up, and then she'll pick up another time and tie up the loose ends. And, that's how I did it when I was first working. So I just worked it around what I needed to do. And nobody wants to micromanage, because actually it's just adding that additional layer of stress to your day. And, I would like to see a point where all parents particularly are managed like that. When employees are younger, they do need to have more of a structure, because they're learning how they need to operate to their maximum. But when you get a little bit older, or should I say more experienced, and you've just got, years in the saddle, if you like, when it comes to working, you're much more able to do that, to pick up and drop work as and when you need to. And that's something that's, it's a pleasure for the person themselves, because they feel like a grown up, but also they become, again, much more productive. So, I've never run a workplace any other way, actually.
Oh, that's amazing. I just feel like that's a very cool place to end today's episode, even though I would like to talk to you even more. So we've got sort of reclaiming control of what we can, really empowering people to make their own decisions, building connections with other people that perhaps would help or inspire you. And when you can, leave your comfort zone. Those are,
Actually, operating at your comfort zone is a really good thing, because your comfort zone is as big as you need it to be. You can push it right, and you will get more out of life if you can operate just slightly out of it, just slightly. Just stretch yourself slightly whenever you can.
Just on the edge,
just pushing it out all the time. If you do it gradually, it doesn't feel aggressive.
Yeah. So that's very cool. And I've loved talking to you here today. And thank you so much for joining us. I will let you go, but I just wanted to say thank you for coming. I'm sure that our listenership enjoyed it immensely.
Lovely. Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate it. Lovely to talk to you.
Take care. Bye.
Yes.